the district attorney's office can have an enormous impact on the resources of the county. Number one, the quicker you get those cases prosecuted, that's less time that you've got court-appointed attorneys who are working on those cases. That's less time they spend in jail. That's less time we're feeding those folks. If they need to go to TDC, they go to TDC. And if they're probation eligible and they're worthy of probation, you put them on probation, then they begin paying fees into the county. There are several ways that can affect the overall budget. Finally, I am a supporter of the Constitution, and I firmly believe that everybody has a right to trial. I do not believe that individuals should have criminal cases hanging over their head for 8, 7, 6, 5 years before they're resolved. And if elected, I will be a working district attorney. I will be in court. Thank you.
Ms. Curry, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to start out this evening by applauding you for being here, for taking the time to invest in your community to learn about the candidates. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I want to make a pledge to you. And that is at the end of this campaign, regardless of the outcome of the election, you will be able to say, Tonda Curry never lied. When I filed to run for this office, I filed the Fair Campaign Practices Act. That's an oath I take very seriously, an oath I am trying my best to live by. Any fact, figure, or number I give you tonight, I have the documentation to back up right here with me or at my table, and I'll be happy to show it to you. I want to earn your vote. I want to earn your vote because I have the experience to handle all aspects of the job of criminal district attorney. I'm committed to making our community a safer place to live. There's only one person in this race who has 14 years of prosecution experience. There's one person who has less than 2 years. I started my career as an assistant U.S. attorney right here. I was prosecuting organized crime and drug trafficking organizations in Van Zandt County and all over East Texas. Doing that, I had the opportunity to lead FBI agents and DEA agents in investigations. I have led multidisciplinary teams of professionals who investigate and prosecute child abuse and sexual abuse of children. I have picked capital murder juries. I have done every aspect of this job. Like the rest of the county, I didn't know that our current district attorney was not going to seek re-election. It's been accused that I moved here just to run for district attorney. I want to dispel that rumor now. That is not the truth. I am running for district attorney because there is no other lawyer in this county who has the prosecution experience to do the job.
Thank you. Our questions will begin with Brad Blankmore, first question.
This question is for both candidates. And Ms. Chambliss, or Mr. Chambliss, you go first. How much experience do you have as a prosecutor? And explain details of that experience, including how many cases and what types of cases they were.
I started off straight out of law school at the Smith County District Attorney's Office. During that time period, as most new prosecutors are, that I worked as a misdemeanor prosecutor up until the point that I got ready to leave the district attorney's office, in which I assisted on some felony cases. At that point in time, I left that office. I went into civil practice. The majority of those misdemeanor cases are what you would expect: DWIs, simple assaults, etc. I went back to the district attorney's office in December of 2016, and I hired in as a felony prosecutor. During that time period, I worked on every single type of case you could think of other than a capital murder case. During that time period, we had 23 different felony charges that went to trial in Smith County, each of which resulted in a conviction. So I can't sit here and list every case. I can tell you I've worked on all of them but capital murders.
Ms. Curry, 1
Thank
minute.
you. I started my career, as I told you a moment ago, as an assistant United States attorney. I spent 12 years doing that. 12 years every day I walked in and out of a courthouse as a prosecutor. 12 years every day I dealt with law enforcement officers, I dealt with laws, I dealt with locking up criminals. I worked briefly at the Smith County District Attorney's Office in 2011, where I was a felony prosecutor. While there, I was charged with representing the district attorney himself at all murder scenes. I was the one who was in charge of making sure that the evidence collection methods used by the officers were constitutional, correct, and would result in admissible evidence. I spent 11 months doing that for the District Attorney's Office in Smith County. I also sat on the Children's Advocacy Center team, and oversaw all sexual abuse of children and physical abuse of children. For the last year, I've been your chief felony prosecutor here in the Zandt District Attorney's Office.
Okay, do we have any rebuttals? Hold applause. Remember, this is a questioning session. During the questions, please don't applaud. Applause. Any rebuttals back and forth? Either one?
I would like to know from Mr. Chambliss how many times he has been a lead felony prosecutor on a felony case. Jury trial. I'm sorry, Bob. Jury trial.
Lead felony prosecutor in the sense of that I have picked the jury myself.
First chair lawyer for a felony trial.
In Smith County, we have first chair designations, we have second chair designations. We split up the work. During the time that I have been in Smith County up until November of last year, I was designated as a second chair attorney. However, in several cases, I was involved in leading the questioning of some of the key witnesses. I've also picked juries. So to answer your question, I guess 2 or 3 where I was the sole attorney that worked on that particular case.
Okay. Our next question is from Ken.
This is for both of you. Ms. Curry first. How many times have you personally handled a death penalty case or selected a jury for a death penalty case? And what were the outcomes, if you can remember?
I have been death penalty certified in this state, which is a special designation that you get after your law degree. I have been death penalty certified in this state since, I believe, 2008. I have personally, and let me back up and say, the law in the state of Texas says when someone's life is at stake, when it's a death penalty case, that person is entitled to at least 2, sometimes 3 lawyers. So there's a team on both sides, whether it be prosecution or defense. I have been a part of that team, I believe, 5 times, maybe more. I have done that from the defense side, and I have never had a client wind up getting the death penalty.
Ms. Chambliss?
How many times have you done that particular thing as a state's prosecutor?
Stand by just a minute. You have 1 minute to answer the same question. We're not in rebuttal. No, it's for both. That's for both. How many times have you personally handled a death penalty case or selected a jury for death penalty?
The answer to that question, and actually I wouldn't even need to go a full minute on this one. I have never handled a death penalty case. I've never selected a jury. One thing that is important, though, that I think that everyone here should know is that Zandt County, as a county, in its entire history, has never tried a death penalty case. And so, in all fairness to both candidates, neither one of us can say, unless we've done it somewhere else, that we've handled death penalty cases. There's never been one tried in Zandt County. So to answer the question directly, I've never worked on a capital murder case in the sense of picking a jury. I have worked with our office on a few capital murder cases, but those cases would have been tried directly by our district attorney in Smith County.
Rebuttal?
Yes, thank you. I did it for the prosecution as part of the prosecution team one time when I was with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Death penalty cases at the U.S. Attorney's Office are highly unusual. I have never done it during either of my tenures at a DA's office. However, to correct what Mr. Chambliss just said, capital murder cases are very expensive. That's part of the reason that a county like this doesn't have the resources to go into a death penalty case. But we have paid into a fund so that if it is needed, we can do it. It's like having an insurance policy. So that penalty is available to us.
Any other response? Okay, next question is for both of you. First response should be from Mr. Chamness. What are your specific plans for addressing the backlog of criminal cases in the Van Zandt courts?
My specific plan would be to, number one, identify the cases quickly. When you screen in a case, once a case has been indicted, you need to be making offers on that case immediately, getting those offers to the defense attorneys. That way, we're not trying to figure out whether or not that case is potentially going to be a trial case on the day that it comes to trial for the first time. The other thing is, we need to be more aggressive in trying cases. As I mentioned earlier, in the last calendar year, there have been 23 different felony charges in which me and my trial partner were part of a jury trial or a bench trial in Smith County. That's one way. The other thing is, there are sometimes individuals who may be probation eligible, but they're in jail because they can't afford the bond. The district attorney's office needs to understand that situation. And if that's a case that's a probation case, we need to get that individual before the judge, get the plea done, get them out of jail, and get them on probation immediately so that the county is not paying for them to sit in jail on a probation case.
Rebuttals? Either one?
I'm sorry, do I get to answer?
Yes, you can respond. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Well, it would be great if we had an intake division and could screen a case right after grand jury. We do our own intake. The Van Zandt County District Attorney's Office is small. There are 4 criminal lawyers in addition to the DA. We don't have the luxury of having someone who does nothing but take cases to grand jury. I've been to grand jury. I've taken cases to grand jury. At the Smith County DA's office, that's done for them. So my plan is this. When a case is filed with the DA's office, it doesn't get filed with a clerk like it does now. When a case is filed with the DA's office, it's going to be filed with me as a district attorney. The law enforcement officer is going to have a direct line to me. We can look at that case. We can make a decision right then and there. If there's evidence missing, if there's a witness that needs to be talked to further, we can make that decision immediately. And that, folks, makes the case stronger. And a strong case makes a plea case.
Mr. Chalmers.
It is true that we do have a division in Smith County that does grand jury. However, one of the questions that I would have a direct response to that is, are you telling me that the person who takes the case to the grand jury in Van Zandt County is incapable of evaluating that case? That's the problem. I have had defense attorneys from this county as well as from other counties that work in Smith County who tell me on a regular basis that they show up to court and get their offer on the case for the first time the day that the defendant's there. You cannot move cases that way.
Ms. Curry?
Yes, sir, thank you. You ask those same defense attorneys if they're talking about me, and the answer is no.
Response? Okay, next question, Brad.
This is for both candidates. Ms. Curry, you'll be first. What are your specific plans to manage the budget and personnel of the DA office, including compensation and hiring, retaining, and/or firing as needed?
My specific plans for managing the budget of the DA's office include being actively involved in the budget process with the county judge and the commissioners, but it also includes sticking to that budget, hiring, firing, doing what needs to be done. And let me brag for just a minute. We have the best staff in the world at the DA's office right here in Van Zandt County. We have a group of young lawyers who are anxious to learn, willing to be led, willing to be taught. And that creates a type of environment that they get committed to, that they want to stay. And with a leader who can make their job easier, make it a learning experience, make them better lawyers, because that leader has had the experience of doing it themselves, because that leader knows how to teach from their own experience, that will result in the retention in the office.
Mr. Chambers.
I'm going to touch on one thing right at the very end first. One of the things that I have been hearing throughout the community is that there is a fear that if I win this election, that I'm going to come in and clean house at the district attorney's office. Number one, that is a ridiculous assumption because first off, I can't run the district attorney's office by myself. Obviously, there would be some changes that I would expect. I want to run things the way that I would want to run it, but in terms of working with the staff, that's obviously something I would want to do, and I plan to do. In terms of the budget, obviously, again, I actually agree with Ms. Curry on this. I think it is important to work with the commissioners and also to work with the county judge, but one thing that I think we can do is we can emphasize more with multi-level agency agreements to where that those asset forfeitures that can occur in large drug bust cases where you may be working with the DEA or the ATF or things like that, that's ways to bring money back into the county, and that's one thing I would seek to do.
Response, either one?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next question from Ken.
This is for Ms. Curry. According to your January 17th campaign finance report, only one or two of your contributors are from Van Zandt County. Why are people outside the county supporting you financially to run for our district attorney position?
Okay, if we were in court, I'd say objection speculation, because you're asking me to speculate as to why somebody else does something and what is in their mind. I can tell you that they are people who I know. Most of them are people who I have known for a long time, and they are people who believe that wherever I practice law, wherever I prosecute, they know that I have done it the right way, that I am true to my word, and they know that I would be an asset as a district attorney of Van Zandt County.
Response. Okay, that concludes our questions for our DA candidates. You'll have 1 minute for closing statements. Ms. Curry, you'll be first.
Thank you. I opened this evening talking about my experience versus that of my opponent. I want to close in talking about my commitment. My opponent's asking you to do something that he himself hasn't done in a decade. He's asking you to vote and to vote for him. His voting record shows that he has not voted in a Republican primary since 2008. To me, that shows a lack of commitment to his community, a lack of commitment to his country, a lack of commitment to Republican values. I, on the other hand, have exhibited that commitment. I have stood in this county, in our courthouse, in front of juries made up of Van Zandt County citizens, and done my best to protect you and to make Van Zandt County a safer place to live. I have one request. If after tonight you don't know who you prefer to be your next district attorney, ask any law enforcement officer you know. Ask them who they are voting for and follow their lead.
I'm going to acknowledge the fact that I have not voted in every Republican primary, and here I am asking you for your vote. Here's why. One of the last questions that was asked was why so much financing from outside sources? And I didn't rebut that because I didn't feel the need to. Here's the reason why I'm asking for your vote. I have lived in this county for 31 years. I have paid taxes. My children go to school here, and here's the thing. I know the pulse of this county. I know what is important to people, and when we're talking about values and morals, I share the same values and morals that each and every one of the individuals in Van Zandt County have. What I want to do is give the county back to the citizens. I want the citizens to determine what cases are worth. And on March the 6th, I plan to draw a line in the sand in regards to the criminal justice system and say, enough is enough, let's fix it.